Chongqing City, in the 1980s, still has the ancient features of an industrial city that is gradually modernizing. In an ordinary residential area, where small alleys are crisscrossed between old buildings, a young girl named Xie Caiping grew up with simple dreams like everyone else. Born in year 1963, Caiping is the only child in a family of state employees. Her father is one tax officer, a stable job but does not bring wealth. Her mother is a gentle housewife, devoted his whole life to taking care of his small family. As the only daughter, Caiping was pampered since childhood. She doesn't have to worry about money or food, because parents always try to give the best to their children. However, that pampering also makes her somewhat stubborn and accustomed to having her every wish met. Year 1982, at the age of 19, Caiping took the National University exam. The result disappointed her whole family. She missed. In the Chinese education system at that time, failing college was not only a personal failure, but also as a shame for the whole family. Her parents had high expectations for their daughter, hoping that she would enter a prestigious university, have a good job and a stable life. Caiping knew that if she took the test again, her results probably wouldn't be any better. She was not an excellent student, nor did she have the patience to continue her education. After many days of thinking, she decided to give up and look for a job. Her father, with his connections in the tax industry, helped her get a job at Chongqing Tax Bureau. Although initially just an ordinary tax officer, Caiping quickly showed diligence and carefulness in work. She approaches work with dedication and eagerness to learn, making her superiors satisfied. Transparent. More than 10 years working at the tax department, 1983 to 1995, Miss continuously received awards, recognized as a diligent employee. She not only learns quickly, but also knows how to treat people, making her colleagues and leaders love her. Her career began to flourish when she was promoted to a low-level management position in the local tax apparatus. In the 1980s in China, marriage was still largely based on family arrangements. Caiping meets Wen Bin, a man of the same age, also from a family of civil servants like her. Initially, she was not impressed with Wen Bin. He is not too handsome, not tall like her ideal type, but both parents were very satisfied with this arrangement, and gradually, feelings between them also arose. Married with the blessing of both families and fast gave birth to a daughter. After working hours at the tax department, Caiping returned home as a dutiful wife and a loving mother to her children. No one could have guessed that. This gentle woman later became one of China's most notorious crime bosses. Come 1995, at age 32, Caiping has opportunity in career. Thanks to the relationship of husband Wen Chang, then it was Deputy Secretary and Deputy Director of Chongqing Police, you can transfer to a tax unit in the city center. She was happy because this is a big step forward, not only in terms of salary, but also in terms of social status. This also means her family can have a better life, her daughter can have a better education. However, this transition is also a fateful turning point, thrust Caiping into a completely different world, the world of money, power, and crime. Caiping starts from one hard-working civil servant, devoted wife and mother. But youthful disappointment, ambition for a better life, and wrong decisions led her down a path of sin. This is stories of many people, not just Caiping. How many people start out with pure dreams, but then get sucked into the vortex of power and money? Her story is a powerful reminder. Success does not come from manipulation or shortcuts, but from the real values we build. In the mid-1990s, Xie Caiping remains a woman devoted to her family. She has a stable job in the tax industry, a husband, and a lovely little daughter. From the outside, her life seems perfect, the ideal model of a woman with both a career and a happy family. But happiness is sometimes as fragile as a glass mirror. With just one small crack, everything can crumble. And with Caiping, that crack is her husband, Wen Bin. Year 1997, when Caiping just moved to a more important tax unit in downtown Chongqing, she started digging. I feel like something is wrong with my husband. Wen Bin is no longer the calm man she once loved. He became erratic, irritable, and often disappeared for days at a time. Initially, Caiping tried to reassure herself. She thought maybe work was stressful, maybe he was having some difficulty that he wasn't ready to share. but the signs are becoming increasingly clear. Family finances began to fall into crisis. Caiping realized that money in bank accounts keeps disappearing. She had always tried to save money so her daughter could study in the best schools, but now she was no longer in control of her own finances. Rumors began to appear. Friends and colleagues whispered behind her back, "Your husband is involved in something unclean." An old friend even hinted that Wenbin might be addicted to drugs. The confrontation was filled with tears. One evening, when Wenbin returned home drunk, with bloodshot eyes and disheveled clothes, Caiping couldn't bear it any longer. She waited for him in the living room, her eyes filled with anger. "What are you hiding from me? Where is the money? What have you done?" Wenbin did not answer. He just stared at her, then threw his jacket on the chair, walked out the door without saying a word. That evening, Caiping searched through her husband's belongings and found a truth that devastated her. Needles, white powder, and irrefutable evidence that Wenbin was an addict. Caiping once thought that marriage is a sacred bond, is where the two of them overcome life's difficulties together. Therefore, instead of leaving her husband, she tries to help him quit his addiction. She talked to Wenbin and advised him to go to rehab. She searched for support centers and even tried to hide his medication. But all efforts were in vain. "Every time I return home, he was no longer the man she had loved. I just came to ask for money, and if you refuse, he would break things, scream, and even throw chairs against the wall." With each such occurrence, Caiping lost a part of himself. She is no longer the strong woman she used to be. She no longer feels safe in her own home. She knew that if she didn't change something, her life would completely collapse. Many people will think that this is when Caiping should leave Wenbin, should divorce, should start over. But in Chinese culture at that time, divorce is still a stigma, especially for a woman of high status in society. She felt stuck between two options: staying with an addicted husband, continuing to endure abuse and financial loss. Step out of this marriage, but face the scrutiny of society and the risk of losing everything. Faced with this situation, Caiping chose a third path, a dark path whose consequences she could not foresee. She just wanted to find a way to escape stress. She needed a place to forget reality, a place where she can control your destiny, at least in that moment. And she found that in casino. There, no one cares who she is. There, she was no longer a helpless wife or a failed woman. There are only cards, numbers, and the chance to start over. But she didn't know that this is just the beginning of a journey that leads her to the abyss. After discovering her husband was addicted to drugs and trapped in a crumbling marriage, Xie Caiping fell into a state of despair. She was once an exemplary civil servant, a devoted wife, and a mother devoted to her daughter. But now she just felt out of control, losing control of finances, marriage, and life itself. She needed a place to stay, forget everything, to regain a sense of control, even if just for a moment. And she found that in casino. Initially, gambling was for Caiping just a way to relieve pressure. She is not the type of person to be easily deceived or fall into simple temptations. She entered the casino, not because I want to get rich quickly, but because there, everything is much simpler than the chaotic life out there. While sitting in front of the game table, Ms. Xie, no longer a wife being taken advantage of by her husband, no longer a mother worried about her daughter's future. There, she is the one in power, is the one who decides the fate of the cards. But those who have ever been involved in gambling know, luck never lasts forever. At first, Caiping big win. She believes that she has a special ability to read the position of cards and predict her opponent's psychology. But like any other player, the consecutive winning streak was eventually replaced by a miserable losing streak. Within a few months, she lost all her savings. But instead of stopping, she did what many other gamblers do: borrow money to continue playing. Debts began to pile up. She knows that if she doesn't find a way to pay, the lenders won't leave her alone. But instead of trying to find a way out, she comes up with a bigger plan, one that will completely change her life's path. One day, while sitting in a crowded casino, Caiping realized something. The real moneymakers are not the players, but the people who run the games. There, she saw casino bosses. They don't care who wins or who loses. They only care about one thing: Every game brings them profit. And that's when she decided to become one of them. Caiping no longer was a gambler too. She wanted to control the game. She used the relationships she had built over many years as a tax official, borrowed money from familiar sources, and opened a small casino in a resort on the outskirts of Chongqing. She knows ways to attract customers, knows ways to get them to stay longer, bet more, and more importantly, she knows how to manipulate them. Within just 1 year, Caiping's casino becoming a familiar place for large players. Hire gangsters to protect you. Guaranteed that no one can mess around or play around. But that was not her boldest move. She started lending money to customers right in the casino. When someone lost all the money, they will be invited into a private room, where Caiping willing to lend them a large sum of money as long as they sign the promissory note. Cruel rule. No one can leave the casino if they owe money. If someone tries leave without paying the debt, they will be detained, even beaten. The most dangerous step, combining gambling with drugs. After seeing her husband destroyed by drugs, Caiping should have stayed away from it. But instead, she turned it into a money-making tool. She provides drugs to guests, causing them addicted to both gambling and drugs, turn them become puppets in her hands. Just within a few years, Caiping was no longer a public servant, no longer a miserable wife, no longer a desperate gambler. She became the queen of gambling of Chongqing. But with that power, she also entered a path with no escape. She may think she has won, but the truth is, she was just gambling with her own fate. And like all those at the top of a criminal empire, one day she will have to pay the price. Xie Caiping no longer an ordinary woman. She doesn't just own a casino, she owns an empire. From a small casino in a resort on the outskirts of Chongqing, Caiping quickly expand operations, control more than 80 casinos throughout the city. Every day, huge flows of money flow into her pocket, bringing millions of dollars in profits. But Caiping isn't just good at making money. She understands something important that many criminals do not realize. If she wants to survive, she must control the system. Although Caiping's casino thrived, she knew that sooner or later, the government will keep an eye on her. Police have conducted many investigations, but every time there are signs of being raided, one phone call, a thick envelope, or a lavish dinner was enough to make the investigation disappear. The most important step, establish relationships with powerful people. Caiping, it's not just about bribing small-time police officers, aim for higher levels who can protect her from the darkness. And the most important person in this protection network, none other than Wen Chang, Deputy Secretary and Deputy Director of Chongqing Public Security. Wen Chang not just a corrupt official, he really is the boss in the dark, who created the conditions for Caiping to develop without hindrance. This way, Caiping no longer worries about the police. They not only turn a blind eye, but also warn her in advance every time there is an investigation. Every year, she spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep this system running. Police, local officials, judges, all have their price. And for a long time, it works perfectly. In the world that Caiping built, everything has its own rules, her rules. No one can leave the casino if they owe money. If someone tries to escape, they will be detained, threatened, or even beaten. Players suffer tempted by money and drugs, sinking deeper and deeper into a spiral with no way out. If customers cannot repay their debts, they are forced to borrow more, mortgage their assets, or even sell their homes. Many families were destroyed because of gambling and debt. And the scariest thing? Caiping doesn't feel guilty at all. With her, this is simply business. She was once a woman who was cornered, betrayed by her husband, and fell into despair. And now, she believes that if she can overcome everything to become a powerful person, then those who lose money will also be responsible for their own choices. But there was one thing she didn't realize. Power doesn't last forever. A criminal empire cannot stay hidden forever. Even though the local police are bribed, there are still people who are not easily manipulated. The central government began to wonder why Chongqing had so many illegal casinos, but no effective crackdowns. A team of high-level investigators is sent to the city to investigate the underground criminal network. And this is the moment that Caiping started to lose control. In 2008, an undercover police officer, was sent into one of Caiping's casinos to collect evidence. But her empire not easily penetrated. Her security officers quickly discovered there were strangers in the casino. This person was suspected of being a police officer, and the order was immediately given: teach him a lesson. The undercover officer was captured, hooded, brutally beaten, and then dumped at a deserted construction site. 6 hours later, the police found him seriously injured. This is no longer just a gambling investigation. This is an attack on government. And that was the time Chongqing police could no longer turn a blind eye. After the attack, some high-ranking officials began to withdraw, refusing to accept money from Caiping. They're watching. Be careful. Stop before it's too late. But Caiping did not believe that his empire could collapse. She overcame many difficulties to get here. How many people did she bribe to maintain this position? She doesn't believe that the government can really touch her. But she was wrong. Xie Caiping once believed that she inviolable. For more than a decade, she ran more than 80 casinos, bribed officials, manipulated the system, and built a network of power that helped her avoid any investigation. She's more than just the queen of gambling. She holds the fate of thousands of people in her hands. But power always has limits, and with Caiping, that limit was brutally tested. After an undercover police officer was brutally beaten by Caiping's juniors, China's central government can no longer ignore it. They not only investigated Caiping, but also her protectors. Corrupt officials, bribed police officers, all are caught in the crosshairs. A plan outlined in secret, a plan that would end Caiping's empire once and for all. Caiping too proud of the loyalty of his juniors. But when the police started putting pressure on those close to her, something inevitably happens. Treachery. Many of her henchmen were captured, and to escape, they confessed everything. Interrogations gradually reveal a map of the entire criminal empire. The names of bribe-taking officials, secret casinos, drug supply lines, all were exposed, and most importantly, the police know where Caiping is hiding. Day 13/7/2009, in a meticulously planned arrest operation, the police forties surrounding a luxury apartment complex in the center of Chongqing. Caiping's luxury car rolled quietly into the parking lot, unaware that the police were waiting. As soon as she stepped out, special forces rushed in from all directions. You were arrested for running a criminal organization and illegal gambling activities. Caiping stunned. She couldn't believe that this is really happening. She was handcuffed and pushed into a police car. The entire empire she built over 10 years, now it's just a pile of ashes. When the first images of the arrest were published, Chongqing shook. Hundreds of newspapers headlined, "Queen of Gambling falls into net." Millions of people followed every development of the case. All of Caiping's assets were frozen. Officials who accepted bribes were investigated. The once brightly lit casinos were permanently sealed. For many families, this is a victory. They lost their homes, money, and relatives because of Caiping's empire. Now, justice has finally been served. But the biggest shock for Caiping did not come from the police. It came from the man she trusted the most, Luo Quan. Luo Quan, the lover 20 years her junior, the one who enjoyed luxury with her, is now the one pushing her into the abyss. In court, he did not hesitate to declare that Caiping was the mastermind behind it all. "I'm just someone who was deceived by her. I don't know anything about this crime ring." The woman who once controlled the fate of thousands of people can now do nothing but listen to the words of betrayal. Day 3/11/2009. Chongqing People's Court officially announced the verdict. Xie Caiping was sentenced to 18 years in prison and fined $150,000. Luo Quan, her lover, was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in prison. Dozens of corrupt officials and police officers were also prosecuted, with sentences ranging from 12 to 13 years. The arrest Xie Caiping not just the downfall of an individual. It was the death knell for a decades-old criminal network, a network maintained by corruption, violence, and fear. But when Caiping sentenced to 18 years in prison, the story is not over yet. The legacy she left behind still haunts Chongqing. More than 100 families lost everything because of gambling. Many people addicted to drugs supplied by Caiping's network can never return to normal life. The children grew up without their parents because they were ruined by debt. For them, Caiping's imprisonment cannot erase the loss she has caused. Casinos are closed, but many still fear those who haven't been caught will return. Some small businesses that were once threatened by Caiping's empire still do not dare to speak up. Many residents refuse to reveal their identities when talking about the case because they feared retaliation. The central government continues to investigate and crack down on remaining criminal organizations. But the question still remains: is everything really over? Caiping's case is a clear example of how power and corruption can manipulate a city, but also a demonstration that no one can escape justice forever. But is an 18-year sentence enough? Has the system really changed, or is it just a pawn being sacrificed? What do you think about this case? Please share your views. Stay tuned to discover more shocking crime stories. Xie Caiping was once a woman who had it all. Power, money, and a network of official protectors helped her escape justice for a decade. But in the end, she was overthrown, betrayed by those who were once loyal to her, and sentenced to 18 years in prison. However, her story is not simply about a female crime boss. It is a lesson about corruption, about greed, and about how power can corrupt a person.